The Hunter of the North found the path across the abyss of Watham, but not without consequence. Ruthless were his pursuers, who had erupted from the raven depths to chase him from the edge of the shore. Atop his skeletal steed, the hunter rode into the narrow, twisted marshes, between the gangly and ever-hungry spider willows. Following ever so closely behind, the pair of pursuers, the dreaded Nukkalevi, allowed the hunter no yield. Together, the three barreled through the webbed marshes. Above, swinging about as if caught by a breeze, the branches of the spider willows watched the hunter, their chelicerae fluttering with an almost erotic anticipation. They began to lash out, striking through the air like wicked whips, lashing at the hunter. Their fangs could find no hold upon the rider's skin, finding time and time again their advances repelled by the thick leather that adorned the hunter's figure. However, this did not deter them. They tried and tried again. Despite the incessant lashes of the spider willows and their venomous fangs, the hunter could afford no hesitation, for he could feel the wilting, withering stench of the Nukkalevi's breath scorching his collar. The ghastly creatures, skinless, with veins pumping with befouled blood, followed the hunter's own fleshless horse step for step, matching it almost exactly in pace. Almost. The horse-like creatures, with torso riders sprouting from their backs like malignant living tumors, howled in frustration. Their arms moved through the putrid air, attempting to knock the hunter off his own accursed mount. But they had to be careful, as much so as the hunter, as the gap separating them was so unchangingly small that a single fault of any of the three would cause the most sudden end to their hellish pursuit, whether in favor of the hunter or the two Nukkalevi. As it would happen, such a slip-up finally did occur. The Nukkalevi, such eternally ravenous creatures, were too consumed with their desire to devour that they did not notice something that the wild hunter before them had. The spider willows ahead, at the end of the marshlands, had spun a trap. A net of silky webbing intended to ensnare the hunter and the two Nukkalevi and leave them to the mercy of the mutant trees. The hunter was no fool, and he had been expecting such a trap for some time. And when he had beheld the first glimmer of such a snare, he did the unthinkable. Dismounting his horse's corpse mid-gallop, he lunged forward, rolling through the stagnant waters and underneath the sticky spindles. His mount and the two Nukkalevi weren't as lucky. His mount scarcely struggled, for it had no life, no precious flesh left to protect. In the net, it simply fell limp and ceased. The two Nukkalevi, however, were not as blithe, howling as the webbing stuck to their flesh, biting into their bodies like razor wire, allowing them to remain still long enough for the razor-sharp, hypodermic hooks of the spider willows to inject them full of paralyzing, degrading toxins. The trees, their focus collectively centered on their freshest catches, couldn't care less for the hunter who, having bid his faithful steed a respectful bow, had left the marshlands behind. His destination was close. He lit a torch and continued into the whispering woods. The dark midday sun loomed overhead, the red stars guiding the hunter through endless dry woods. He stuck to the mark, following in the direction of the southern constellation, the guiding hand of Erithos. There, past the trees that whispered to him, "Come here, and let me see you, face to face." He would find the trail, the path to his quarry, where he would find the hanging dogs. There were dozens when he found them, Just like his master had said, dozens of dead dogs, big dogs, hanged from barbed wire around their bloody necks, pinned to trunks and wrapped around branches. They offered a clear message. "Keep out," the hunter muttered under his breath. He did not oblige the disgusting warning. Instead, he followed the dogs along the trail that their corpses surrounded, a path set straight through the whispering woods that led the hunter to an old cabin. A cabin with smoke that billowed from its chimney and into the frigid sky. The hunter allowed a smile to grace his grizzled face. He had made it. A knock upon the wooden door, and, after a few silent minutes, the entryway creaked open, just a smidge. Just enough to let the cabin's owner peer out. "Who goes there?" he inquired cautiously. "What business do you have with me?" "I have no business with anyone," the hunter said with a smirk. "I'm just trying to make my own." "Aren't we all?" the owner said. "You have to be wary round these parts. What is it you want?" The hunter shrugged. "A bit of hospitality." "You were born on the wrong verse for that, my friend." The owner chuckled. "Weren't we all?" the hunter said, intentionally turning the owner's own words against him. "I'm just looking for a place to rest my eyes." "You're mighty trustin'," the owner said, shaking his head. "That I am," the hunter acknowledged without clarification. The hunter was, indeed, very trusting, but only of one person: himself. He believed in no one else to ever keep him half as safe, and to be half as true. The door swung open, and the portly man inside gestured for the strange hunter to enter. The hunter smiled, tipped his wide-brim hat, and stepped inside. The door swung shut behind him, leaving him and the owner alone. The hunter surveyed the cabin's interior. The walls were barren, aside from a few blood-drawn sigils, a handful of protective charms meant to keep evil at bay. There was a kitchen with some cabinets and a sink on its right. In the center of the main room, on his left, before the fireplace, sat 2 chairs. Each one faced the other, and neither faced the fire. The hunter helped himself to one chair, and the owner, with cautious eyes, took the other. A pot boiled and steamed over the open fire. "The dogs," the hunter said. "Hanging dogs." "You?" "Aye," the owner said, looking towards the door. "We got a bad skinwalker problem in these parts. I take care of 'em." "Skinwalkers?" the hunter asked. "Oh, surely you met one," the owner said, flabbergasted. "Once or twice," the hunter admitted. "Never more than that. You've got a few dozen out there. You sure they're all guilty?" "Probably not," the man said. "Walker or not, I kill any dog that comes around. I don't trust them. I don't trust anything here." "Wise of you," the hunter said. "What do you cook?" "That means you too," the owner said, cocking a handgun he pulled out of the side of the chair. The hunter showed no surprise on his face. "I mean no harm," he said calmly. "Then you don't belong in this world of nightmares," the owner said sternly. "I don't think any of us belong in this dark world," the hunter said, leaning forward, looking at the fire. "What are you cooking?" The owner glanced at the fireplace, to the moaning kettle. Gun still raised, the owner walked, or rather limped, over to the pot, and stirred its contents. "Stew," he said, lifting the wooden spoon to his lips, tasting it. "Puckwoodje. I found a cave of 'em about 500 paces northeast of here. Been stealing the crops from the child groves." "Skin is supposed to bring good luck," the hunter said. "If you believe in such a thing." "Course I don't," the owner sniffed. "Doesn't hurt to try, though." The hunter shifted in his seat, and the owner took notice. He raised his gun to eye level, and the hunter raised his hands, harmlessly. The owner shook with fear. "Don't," he said. "Several bullets. Kill just about anything here. Including you." "I don't fear no silver," the hunter said. "Then you should fear bullets." "Fair point," the hunter said. "Like I've said, I have no need of any violence. I would quite fancy a drink should you have one." The owner thought about the hunter's words for a moment, focusing more on his calm, collective tone. He lowered his weapon and nodded his head. "What's your poison? Lifeblood?" "I'm not vampire folk," the hunter said with a chuckle. "Whiskey will do nicely." "You look like one," the owner said, hobbling over to the kitchen. "Are you?" the hunter asked. "You wouldn't believe what I was if I told you," the owner remarked, much to the hunter's pleasure. "Try me," the hunter continued. "I can imagine quite a bit." "Of that I'm sure," the owner said, fishing through his cabinet. "But for the time being, I will hold on to the knowledge of what I am and spare you the burden, just in case." Pulling a dusty bottle from the rear of the cabinet, the owner took to washing 2 glasses from the sink basin, drying them by hand. Curiously, while he did so, he looked at the hunter's eyes. "I don't know what you are," he said, tongue-in-cheek. "If it makes you feel better, I ain't ever seen your eyes before." The hunter tilted his head. "You only got the pupils," he said. "All black. No white, no color, no soul." "Probably true," the hunter acknowledged. "Yet I still feel damned regardless." To this, the cabin's owner laughed heartily. "Oh, don't we all? In this place. This is hell." "It's something," the hunter said, grinning. "It's many things, I'd reckon. Self-sustaining cesspool? Certainly. It's a dumping ground for creation's mistakes. A living cancer in the multiverse. My home. Whether I choose it or not, that's for sure. But hell? No. I don't think it's that." "Then you're more optimistic than most," the owner said, waddling across the creaking floor, carefully grasping the 2 poured glasses. He handed one to the hunter, to which he responded with a curt, "Thank you," and he took the other one as he sat back down on the other chair. He downed it all almost immediately. The hunter savored his in small sips. Across the room, the silver handle of the owner's gun glinted from where he had left it on the counter. "Only thing that makes me feel warm anymore," the owner said. "Stop longing for it," the hunter suggested, "and you won't resent its absence so much. Learn to take pleasure in the frisky bite of the night. Your dark lover." "That helps, doesn't it?" the owner asked, a glitter in his eyes. "I mean, whatever works." The hunter chortled. "No, because I've never longed for warmth." "You never longed for the sun's grace upon your skin?" The hunter stared into the fire. "I've never understood it. The frivolity of such fairy tales. Why engage them? It's not frivolity to believe in the sun, the man said, offended. It's hopeful. It has never existed, the hunter said, matter-of-factly. It did somewhere, the owner said, longingly. I felt it once. Did you now? I scarcely believe that. Believe it, the owner bragged. If you felt the sun, the hunter started, then I was born in the fresh coves of the south, and I suckled on a banshee's teat. Aye, I have, the owner said defiantly. And it was wonderful. Tell me about it, the hunter said, leaning back, enjoying himself. Prove it. Like the kiss of the most beautiful woman on the nape of your neck, the owner said, sighing. Like bliss and joy made corporeal. A fleeting moment of forever. A forever where everything is okay, and the dark never comes. You don't feel it then, of course. That would be too fair. You don't feel it until it's long gone, buried in your mind, and you're lost to the dark and cold. A memory everlasting. The almost forgotten moment of eternity. And that's the best way I can describe it. It's what defines pureness in my world. The forever kiss. The hunter took another sip of whiskey. He felt no kiss in its tingling burn. What do you here anyways? The owner asked. Confused, lost for a moment in thought, the hunter cast his dark eyes to the owner, who shrugged. I never asked. Disappointedly licking his lips, the hunter sat forward in his chair, rolling the glass between his fingertips. I'm hunting, he said. Hunting something in these woods. A monster? The owner asked. The hunter nodded. Worst of the worst. One that doesn't belong here. The owner chuckled. Gonna have to narrow it down a bit, mate. There's lots of beasts in these woods. Tracking it's gonna be I know where it is, the hunter said, setting the glass down on the floor. I've tracked it for months across the northern Blairmire shores. Blairmire? The owner asked. You're from the mainland, then? Yes, the hunter said. Where do you hail from? South of Cantor Took. You know of it? The South Fields and the Nightmare Rail Yards, the owner recalled, with a shiver. You came from there? The hunter nodded silently. How did you ever cross the abyss? Carefully, and not without loss, the hunter recalled, thinking of his steed. You must really hate this thing you hunt, the owner said. Pardon? The hunter asked. Well, what other reason would someone hunt something so ferociously? I couldn't even imagine crossing the abyss for just any reason. No amount of money could ever make me. Not even the tastiest flesh in the verse could ever... Would you do it for the sun? The hunter asked. Would you do it if you could feel the sun on your skin once more? The forever kiss that defines pureness in your world? The owner was taken off guard. He hadn't even considered such a thing was possible. He pondered it for but a moment, before eagerly nodding with an almost childish grin. Yes, I think that might possess me enough to... Interjecting, the hunter stood. That's why I do it. To restore the pureness to my world. Alarmed, the owner reached for the gun, only to shockingly remember that he'd left it on the counter. There's nothing pure about this world, the owner said. I don't know what beast you seek. I told you, the hunter said, angrily. I hunt the worst of the worst, the creatures that taint the dark world. Those who don't belong here."
"Thought you said none of us did,"
the owner said, standing to match the hunter. He found, to his dismay, that the hunter was still easily a head taller. "I said none of us were born here," the hunter said. "I never said we didn't belong." The owner took a step backwards, like the hunter wouldn't notice.
"There's quite a few creatures in these woods," the owner said. "And I'm sure that time is terribly short, so you should probably be going."
"You don't belong here," the hunter said.
"I don't know what you're talking about,"
the owner said, taking another step back, readying himself to sprint across the room to reach his gun.
"Who couldn't belong here? This is a world of nightmares and chaos, a world without sense, a world of monsters and—"
"And," the hunter said, reaching out, grabbing the owner's arm firmly in his grip. "You are human." The owner, the man, started to panic as his skin burned at the touch of the hunter's hand.
"Don't," he said, pleading. "Please, I can't be human. There hasn't been a human in these parts in the last—"
37 years, the hunter recalled. "I know. I dealt with that one, too." The owner, gasping in pain, could only manage to mouth the word.
"Please."
"You don't belong here," the hunter said, as his face split apart, his skull and face splitting from his eyes and his jaws. "Consider this a kindness, my bit of hospitality." The man screamed as the hunter split in two, and a mass of writhing, razor-sharp appendages emerged from the hunter's torso. They surrounded him like a cage, each bar cutting and burning at the slightest touch. The last thing he saw were the hunter's soulless eyes and lipless smile. The hunter retracted the cage inwards, shredding the human as his body resealed itself, his armor reformed, and his face returned to its nearly human shape. Aside from a bloodstain on the floor, he left no trace behind of his presence. Fixing his hat, the hunter headed towards the door, opening it, and giving his body back to the loving bite of chilled darkness. So pure,